Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy, and the subjects can get saucy. So, if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted chats with some of the most interesting culinary voices in the American South. This region is one of the country's vacation and retirement playgrounds. But beyond the warm weather and beautiful scenery, there's a rich culture steeped in community and often dark and complicated history, and plenty of innovation among the tradition. I'm Stephanie Burt, and I've spent a career covering this region for magazines, newspapers, and websites. And to me, the best introduction to the American South is through its food culture and the growers and makers who make it delicious. I invite you to come on the road with me from the Appalachian Mountains to the clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico and everywhere in between. I'm always hungry for that next bite, thirsty for the next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is supported today by Big Spoon Roasters. I've been a fan of these small batch nut butters for years before I interviewed co-founder Mark Overbay in 2022. And that's because they're not even in the same category of your average peanut butter. Produced in Hillsborough, North Carolina, these specialty spreads use the most sustainably sourced products available in recipes ranging from Fiji ginger almond butter that includes mission almonds, crystallized ginger, and sea salt, to a lemon cookie, cashew, and coconut butter. They make nut butters for you chocolate fans too, and limited seasonal recipes that pop up on the scene sometimes as well. Over the years, I've received jars from them a few times to play with and potentially use in recipes, but that's been an utter fail. I've just ended up eating them straight from the jar with a spoon every time. Visit bigspoonroasters.com to check out all the nut butters, energy bars, and even peanut butters for dogs, and order online or look for them at Whole Foods and other specialty grocery retailers. Big Spoon Roasters believes our food choices matter, and choosing Big Spoon is a delicious decision. On a cool, misty morning when the trees were bright green with their first flush of leaves, I rounded a corner on Route 215 in the North Carolina mountains and arrived at one of Sunburst Trout's rainbow trout farms. Pristine water flowed continuously into multiple holding ponds, which held different sizes of trout with plenty of room to move around and swim. Here, in this storybook cove, these beautiful fish have grown for generations just downstream from the Pisgah National Forest. Wes Eason is the third generation to raise trout at Sunburst, which was founded by his grandfather in 1948, and the company preserves Appalachian food traditions, including the value of necessity. Morsels of trout that are too small for filets become smoked trout dip or trout jerky, and the roe of harvested fish is preserved and sold as trout caviar. Many of the chefs featured on the show include Sunburst Trout Farm products on their menus, and that was exactly how I discovered this iconic North Carolina business years ago. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Wes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I've had such a fun morning driving up and going to see trout that were just delivered to the farm about 20 minutes away from this processing plant. And then they'll spend a few weeks, couple months there before they come this way.
Kind of depends on the size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it is in Haywood County, it's a rainforest, so it's been a little rainy today.
Exactly, which as a trout farmer, I'm grateful for.
Exactly.
I never curse the rain.
Well, I'd love to begin there because when we're talking about beautiful, pristine mountain trout, we're definitely going to start with the water.
Right.
And what's so cool, I learned this morning is that, and I should have known this from Haywood County in my travels here before, but Haywood is a watershed county. So that means that everything flows out of the county.
That's correct. The main watershed for Haywood County begins in the Pisgah National Forest, which just so happens to be like 2 miles above us. So that water flows from the top of the mountain down into Lake Logan, which you saw, which is our main reservoir, and we pull the water directly out of that lake into our farm.
3 farms, 3 separate locations, or 2.5?
Yes, we use currently 2, one in Haywood County, one in Transylvania County in Balsam Grove. And the cool thing about that is it's on the opposite side of the watershed. So it's still the Pisgah National Forest. It's just flowing into Transylvania instead of Haywood.
And so you like to say it's the same water.
It's the exact same water.
Yeah, it's the same water. So this is one of the areas of the country that has some of the cleanest water.
Yes.
In the country.
Right.
Right? And we're here at the processing plant. And after that, Anna was telling me that you get to actually, with the recirculation tanks, the water goes right back into the creek because it's as clean or cleaner than the water.
So when the water comes here from our farm, we put the fish in the recirculating tanks. We deprive the fish of feed for 2 to 3 days before we transfer them here. And then when we bring them here, they don't have any food in their gut to digest. They've already processed that as waste out at the farm where we've got 6,000 gallons a minute flowing through. So it's diluted.
Mm-hmm.
So that, yes, we discharge directly into Richland Creek, and the only thing going in there is well water and some protein from the, fish's skin. This is hard to fathom. We can pull fish out of the water at 7 a.m. and it could be on a Nashville lunch menu by 1:30 in the afternoon. And that's in the mountains. You might expect that if you're eating on the coast, but here we are landlocked in the mountains of North Carolina, and you've got fish that was swimming 6 hours before you're eating it for lunch.
Right. It's so fresh and it's so beautiful. When I've taught workshops before on how to understand when a fish is fresh and how to look at it. And I'm in there right now, just a few minutes before, looking at these beautiful filets. They still have a lot of color on them. The scales are really clean and tight.
Right.
And you don't get any fresher than that.
No, our practices are good. They come from, like I mentioned, the beautiful watershed of the Pisgah National Forest. So that's federally protected, of course. So the water that comes into our farm is not tainted or touched by anything else. There's no industry, agriculture, businesses, homes, anything above us that could potentially harm the water. So we're literally the first people to use that water for pretty much anything. The trout have to have clean water. I always tell people when they ask, what's your watershed like? Is your water clean? Trout won't survive in water that's not real pristine. They are a very sensitive creature. And if that water's too warm, not enough oxygen, too dingy, polluted, they're dead. They simply won't survive.
And they won't survive if it's above like 75 degrees, right?
Yeah, even lower than that. 72 is danger zone for sure.
Wow. This was a farm, people have heard, that was started by your grandfather.
Correct.
And so I have to ask a personal question there.
Sure.
I've talked to a lot of people that are family businesses, right? And so you had to have that moment where you decided trout was the stream for you, right? I'm going to use that pun.
Right. You should.
So can you talk a little bit about coming into the business and living with the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked at the trout farm as a kid. Summers I would go and help out and do pretty much whatever the nastiest job was on the farm. That's what I was relegated to doing. When you're the grandfather / founder's grandkid, you don't get, the cushy office job when you're 13 years old. So I did not anticipate going into the family business as a young teenager at all. I went to the College of Charleston and majored in sociology with a criminology minor. So exactly what you would need for raising rainbow trout, right?
Of course. I have a master's in American Lit, exactly what you need for food and audio engineering.
Right.
I'm right there with you.
We're both putting our educational dollars to good use.
Absolutely.
But after college, I dabbled in, I was in real estate for a bit. I worked in juvenile delinquency intervention in Charleston County. And after realizing that's not what I wanted to do, after thinking my whole life that is what I wanted to do, was kind of just figuring out what my next step was as, someone in their early 20s. And at the time, my father said, we're a little short staffed at the farm. If you want to come help out for a little bit, figure it out. And, I'm still helping out on the farm 20 plus years later. So I've worked with the family full time since spring of 2001.
That's amazing.
And immediately I looked at the whole business model completely different than when I was a young teenager. It was just summer work, processing fish. But as soon as I came back and I saw like the cool customer base and we were processing caviar and all this neat stuff, I immediately looked at it as the larger entity that it was and all the local people that we were employing. And it was just, I looked at it completely different and kind of fell in love, maybe a little strong, but really appreciated and respected the business so much right away.
Well, and that's really how I found out about Sunburst Trout. It was on a menu. I was telling you, I think maybe 15 years ago, had a deviled egg with a little sliver of smoked sunburst trout on top.
That's a great combo.
And I was like, wait, what is this? And that's always how it starts for me. And so many chefs that I have had on the Southern Fork and had the opportunity to interview over the years and all the magazines that I've written for, you love your product and they love it because it's fresh. They also love it because it's back to that personal interaction. I know that when you're saying that you're delivering to the back doors of these restaurants,
correct,
right? So you have 4 different routes in Western North Carolina?
Yeah, we run 3 different routes.
3 different?
3 to 4 twice a week, and then an extra one every Wednesday to kind of Cashers Highlands area that's a little more seasonal.
It's not just fresh fillets. You have the smoked trout, you have the trout roe, and I know that I'm a big Batarga fan, so I asked you about chefs buying it and smoking it inside their kitchens. But you also have something that is perfect for cookout season.
Yeah, we do a hickory smoked trout dip, which is a really cool product. We start with our hickory smoked trout fillet as the base. Nearly 50% of the product is hickory smoked trout. And then we fill in with cream cheese and sour cream. Most seafood dips, if you look at them on the market, the first ingredient is not what you're after. It's going to be mayonnaise or cream cheese, and then they fill in with the good stuff. But we start with the smoked trout first, and then round it out with fresh green peppers, fresh onions, nice seasonings to go with it. But yes, it's the perfect like picnic item, some nice mild crackers to go with it. It's smoky, it's creamy, it's absolutely perfect.
So you're not just selling wholesale, you're actually selling retail, and it's online.
We can get pretty much anywhere on the East Coast within 2 days.
That's pretty cool. Now, you have been smoking trout here at Sunburst for multiple generations, and you're using hickory sawdust and a really precise process now that I got to check out that keeps a really good consistent product, whether you're just buying the smoked trout itself or the dip. But I was really fascinated by the way your granddad rigged it up.
Yeah, the original smoker, this would have been like early 80s, 82, 83 or so. And it was the first value added product they did. And what he did was basically purchased an empty tractor trailer, insulated the walls, and put sawdust all over the floor so it would hopefully not burn down, which thankfully it didn't. And then he put a old-timey wood stove underneath it, cut a hole in the floor, and built a hickory wood fire underneath. So you had wildly inconsistent temperatures and smoke densities, etc. But
and somebody that had to monitor it.
And this was pre-FDA regulation days, so the temperatures could vary. You had some pieces that were smoked perfectly, some that were a little under smoked, some that were heavily smoked. It was definitely a heavier smoked product back then because of the method that it was. Now it's a lighter smoke where you do kind of taste the fish a little bit more. It's a smoked product, but you taste the fish more than the smoke.
There are people that are listening that have never had rainbow trout.
Sure.
So let's drill down to actually what kind of flesh it is. It's a redder flesh.
So I talk about most people have had salmon. If you've had salmon, take the kind of robust flavor of salmon back about 40%, and that's kind of what trout is. So if you like salmon, you are almost certainly going to like trout because they're in the same family. It's just a slightly more mild flavor where you still get, the nice, robust pop, the fresh water, but it really takes on whatever seasonings you throw with it too. I mean, when I cook it at home, it's just simple salt, pepper, olive oil, and it really lets the flavor of the fish shine.
Mm-hmm.
But all the wonderful chefs, here in Western North Carolina, it's like a blank canvas for them. They can do whatever they want with it, and they can go so many different directions. It can just take on the flavors of so many different things.
I mean, your trout really is an iconic dish at this point, fresh sunburst trout on so many Western North Carolina restaurant menus. And, for those of you that don't get the opportunity to kind of come this way, there's some really good chefs cooking up here.
It's amazing. It's summertime in Western North Carolina that's right in our wheelhouse for selling our trout products for sure.
Did your family sell to chefs before you?
Yes. The model has definitely changed some. Back in the 80s, early 90s, it was more to like seafood wholesalers, seafood brokers, distributors. So kind of like larger scale volume orders to less customers. And in the early 2000s, it started to morph a little more into direct to restaurants. You started seeing a little more like chef driven, independently owned, farm to table, if you will, popping up. And that was great for us because people realized they could get fresh mountain trout, a day out of the water, if not the day of.
Right. And you get your name on the menu.
Absolutely. We love that.
When you took over the business and, you are selling more direct to chefs, do you remember a memorable dish from those early days? And you're like, yeah, that's my product.
Absolutely. Probably the greatest source of pride back when I was a freshman at College of Charleston and went into a grocery store, Harris Teeter, downtown, right on the peninsula on East Bay Street. And we walked in, and above the seafood counter is this giant glossy portrait picture of my grandfather, Dick Jennings, and he's holding this like 5-pound trout, wearing his like slick apron, his hairnet, his galoshes. And I was with my roommate and just pointed up and I was like, "That's my grandfather." He's like, "No, it's not." Yeah, it's him.
So you did me one better, not just the chef, but your grandfather and the Harris Teeter on East Bay.
It was really cool. But yeah, having chefs come and visit and do shows and people that take interest in it. I mean, probably the most chef starstruck was when Jacques Pepin came and did a show with us back in 2003, which was, to this date, no offense to the other awesome chefs around, but to this date, the best trout I've ever eaten in my entire life.
How'd he cook it?
God, you have to watch the show on Chef's Afield. I wouldn't do it justice, but it was just like slow, kind of poached, braised. He cooked it whole bone in, but head off, and then deboned it and pieced it back together so it looked like a whole fish on the platter. And then he finished it with this like horseradish kind of shallot cream sauce. This is unbelievable.
Well, you did pretty good justice to it right there.
I hope so, Jacques.
He's a great chef.
He's phenomenal, an amazing man too.
He is. I'm really grateful to have had him on the show, and
great.
He's a wonderful interview too, as you would imagine.
I'm sure.
Lots of stories. I have to ask. I mean, this is just such a popular food business, culinary maker, and anchor of Western North Carolina and Waynesville and Asheville and Cashers and Highlands. What's next? What is making you hungry?
I mean, we just want to keep doing what we're doing. We want to keep putting out the best, freshest product, seeing, amazing chefs do great things with it. And the next generation of chefs, like all these amazing executive chefs that we work with, they don't want to work forever. One of my favorite tours to give is for culinary schools, and they send a group 10, 12 students out because that's the next generation of chefs. So it's like, it's teaching the next generation of chefs about our beautiful, fresh, delicious product and how they can incorporate it at, maybe a restaurant that they're going to own one day.
Are there challenges you're having to face in the business as far as climate or development?
Yeah, not development so much, thankfully, but yes, climate for sure. Mother Nature, keeps me awake at night. Is she going to be, too hot, too cold, too rainy, not rainy enough? The stuff that we can control, I think we do a really good job of. The stuff that's out of our control, like rainfall and heat, nothing we do about that.
And just to drill down for a second on the rainfall, it is that the rain keeps the stream of water more consistently cool, right? So you don't just need rain, you need consistent rain.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of the ideal thing, and it's especially important in the summer months when it's hotter. The water temperatures are going to be naturally up more anyway. So
if anybody's gone in a pool after it rains, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So to have maybe daily's a bit greedy for me to ask for, but if it could just be a nice shower every day, that's perfect. These heavy thunderstorms that come through that drop 2 inches of rain in an hour, those aren't as ideal. They don't build the water table up quite the same that a nice slower soaker would, but we'll take whatever. But yeah, we want the rain, but then we've had 2 or 3 floods in the past, hurricanes that have wiped out farms, and we've lost hundreds of thousand pounds of fish. So
because hurricanes still keep coming inland after they make landfall.
I mean,
and so they get here and they could be a tropical storm.
Yeah, we've had 300-year floods in the last 20 years, so it doesn't quite add up. But.
Well, what is one aspect of this job that you're born into and decide to take on that really meshes like a puzzle piece with the natural aspect of your personality?
Yeah, great question. So I'm one of the owners, so obviously wear a lot of hats, but my primary hat is sales director. So I enjoyed meeting new chefs, having the relationships I do with the current chefs we work with. So getting able to talk on the phone with them, see them at events, even if it's just a quick email. A lot of these guys are my friends, not just customers. So I would say just, being gregarious and enjoying interacting with people certainly gels well with being director of sales, even if it's just to see, do you need 10 or 20 pounds on Tuesday? It's still fun just interacting with people. I don't I couldn't do a cubicle by myself all day long. So it fits well.
You basically have a community.
Exactly. Yeah.
Build, you've got a network of people and you get to talk to your friends.
Yes.
A couple times a week.
Exactly.
And then get mad at them when they were like, we don't need anything. And you're like, but I'm your friend.
Yeah. I don't care if it's February.
Exactly. Is there anything keeping you up at night?
Oh, what doesn't keep me up at night? My sleep apnea. No, like I said, Mother Nature, it's worrisome. It's out of our control, so to speak. So we do what we can do. We treat the water. We put oxygen in the water. We try and make sure they're the coldest farm available during the time of year, and things we can control. That's what I focus on, and try not let anxiety ruin a potentially good night's sleep with worrying about how wet July is going to be.
July's wet. I used to live in Sapphire Valley, so I know it is. And by treating, you're saying that you oxygenate, is that the word?
Yeah, exactly. It's just liquid oxygen. It's just the warmer months.
Yeah.
We basically turned the system on last week.
I'm just clarifying that because, when people say they treat things, sometimes they put chemicals and stuff, and that is not what you're saying.
Treating's probably not a great word. It's more just like oxygenating the water.
Right. I just wanted to clarify
that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'm excited to finally, I've had you on the list to interview probably 7 of the 9 years, and I don't know what happened, but today's the day.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
And so I'm glad I made it, but one of the things that I reserve just for Southern Fork guests is this last question, and this is my magic picnic basket question. So with this picnic basket, I can time travel. I can go back and ask anybody to make one more bite of something that you'd like. I can cook a little bit, and I can definitely source from other chefs and other farms that you love. So I'd love to put some things in the basket. I know it shifts and changes. You love food. It's obvious. So I'd like to put some things in there that bring you life today. That is just when I ask that question, what would be in that basket for you?
Yeah, it's another good question. I'm a big red meat guy. Thankfully, people like fish more than I do on a daily basis. That being said, I do eat trout. once a week at home with my family. But in that basket would definitely be like, soon I've got access to a grill outside on the parkway or whatever, it'd be some local dry aged beef. Absolute favorite, a nice smoky, just beefy ribeye would be fantastic. Probably start it with some smoked caviar, which we produce. Very light hickory smoke on it. And then just pairing that with, either a simple cracker or a blenny, some creme fraiche.
Mm-hmm. And then is it just all ribeye on that plate, or are there any sides?
I mean,
if you have
it'd be
to,
meat heavy, but no, I would have gone to the North Asheville Tailgate Market. I don't know if you've ever spent time there. It's on the UNCA campus. It's like 80 vendors and just phenomenal, vegetable growers in Western North Carolina.
Oh my gosh. There's so many small farmers doing so many specific things, not only for the local consumer market, but also for restaurant markets. So there's a lot of crossover. You can get really pretty heirloom stuff and very unusual things too.
Oh, it's amazing. You see it on restaurant menus, just the phenomenal experimental things that different chefs are doing with whatever produce is in season at the time.
Are you a red wine guy? Are we drinking a cab with this?
No, it'd be a white wine. It's I know
I'm a white wine person too.
Yeah, I know.
Are you thinking Albarino? It can stand up, right?
That'd be perfect.
I'll make that happen for you. I'll even set up a place on the parkway so we can grill. But
let's go.
If you want to learn more about Wes and Sunburst Trout, you know where to go. Go to thesouthernfork.com. We're going to have links there as well as images so you can see the face behind the voice. If you like what you hear, this is a fun job. I love going behind the scenes, but you can live vicariously without having to put on your rain boots on a Monday afternoon. Dip into the archives. You can listen to more interviews. I'm definitely going to put the Jacques Pepin episode on the show notes.
Right. Yeah, it's a
so
fun
that
watch.
People can access that really easily. But if you are interested in this kind of thing, there's a lot more out there, and there are a lot more people that are probably interested that are your friends. So please share this episode if you enjoy it. But meanwhile, my stomach's growling. It's time for some lunch. Thank you so much for letting me hang out.
Thanks for joining us, folks.
Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. Are you going to be in Charleston on June 20th? Do you need an excuse to be in Charleston on June 20th? Well, I have an excuse for you if you're looking for one. On June 20th, the Southern Fork is hosting and presenting its first ever pop-up dinner. And I'm so excited to be your host for the evening for the Summer Solstice Supper with headliners Talat Market of Atlanta, Georgia. If you're familiar with the podcast, then you know that last season I interviewed Parnas Savang of Talat Market on the show. It was such a fun episode to interview after an amazing, joyful meal the night before. I'm excited to bring these chefs to Charleston to cook for one night, but it is going to be a star-studded event full of past Southern Fork guests. We also have past Southern Fork guest Andrea Upchurch, who is the former pastry chef of Obstinate Daughter and Beard Cats on Sullivan's Island. And before that, she was the pastry chef at Cypress and Magnolias. And then past guest, Big Spoon Roasters, who you also might have noticed is supporting the show today. They are joining us from Hillsborough, North Carolina. They are going to be at the event with their delicious nut butters. Megan DeShane, who is a mixologist maven in Charleston and former guest on the show, is going to be mixing up delicious welcome cocktails. And the Southern Fork's new experience coordinator and sommelier, Kelly Holmes, will be selecting wines for the evening. So it is a fun, family-style, intimate dinner, and there are limited tickets, and tickets are already selling. So if you are interested in joining us for June 20th celebration of the longest day of the year, I just love that day because I love summer. And so that is how I wanted to kick off all these experiences. If you're ready to join us, please go to thesouthernfork.com/experiences to purchase your ticket. That is the only place that you can purchase these tickets. And once again, go to thesouthernfork.com/experiences, or you can look in the nav bar and see book experiences, and you will be able to get to it that way as well. I hope to see you on June 20th. A great evening of delicious Thai food and some really wonderful seasonal desserts and some things made with outstanding Good Food Award-winning nut butters. So thanks so much for listening today. Hope to see you soon, and I'll be right here on the mic next week.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you gonna eat all that?